The crystal chandeliers caught the light and threw it everywhere, across the white tablecloths, across the silverware, across the faces of 200 people who had come to watch my only son get married. That I stood at the head table, my champagne flute sweating in my grip. The stem was cold. The bubbles had gone flat. I hadn't touched it in 20 minutes, not since Derek had tapped his knife against his glass and the room had hushed. That he was standing at the microphone now, his arm around his bride, Melissa. Her dress was white and enormous, spilling over the edge of the platform. She looked like she was standing on a cloud. Derek cleared his throat. The sound echoed through the country club ballroom. I want to say something, he began. Something I should have said a long time ago. My fingers tightened around the glass. My ex-wife, Patricia, sat 2 seats down from me, her hand draped over Gerald Voss's arm. Gerald wore a new suit, navy, Italian cut, lapels so sharp they could cut glass. His watch alone cost more than my truck. That he caught me looking and smiled. That I looked away. That my palms were damp. I pressed them against the tablecloth. Derek's voice carried through the speakers. There are fathers by blood, he said, and there are fathers by choice. And I've been lucky enough to have one of each. My stomach tightened. I want to thank the man who was there for me when it mattered, Derek continued. The man who taught me how to negotiate. How to stand up straight. How to be a man in the world. He turned. His eyes found mine. That I held my breath. Then his gaze slid past me like I was a stranger at the bar. It's my stepfather, Gerald, Derek said. He stepped in when my biological dad stepped out. He gave me the tools I needed. The education. The confidence. The belief that I could be someone. The room erupted into applause. Someone was clapping my shoulder. I didn't know who. I couldn't feel it. My ears were ringing. I looked down at my hands. The champagne flute was still there. I set it down on the table. The stem wobbled. I steadied it with my thumb. Gerald rose from his chair and walked to the microphone. He put his arm around Derek. The photographer's camera clicked and clicked, capturing every angle of their embrace. This is the son I always wanted, Gerald said into the mic, his voice booming. And I couldn't be prouder. Patricia dabbed her eyes with a napkin. She was crying. She was crying like this was some kind of redemption story. Melissa leaned over and whispered something to Derek. He laughed. They kissed. I pushed back my chair. The legs scraped against the hardwood floor. A few people glanced over, but no one said anything. No one stopped me. I walked to the bar. The bartender was a young man with a bow tie. He looked at me. What can I get you, sir? Scotch, I said. Neat. He poured it. I drank it. The burn spread through my chest, but it didn't warm me. The toast continued behind me. I could hear Derek's voice, laughing, joking, telling stories I wasn't part of. Stories about Gerald. Stories I'd never heard. I closed my eyes. When I opened them, Derek was walking toward me. Dad, he said. The word landed like a stone. Son. He stood beside me at the bar. He didn't order anything. He just stood there, watching the crowd. You didn't eat your dinner, he said. I wasn't hungry. He nodded. He didn't look at me. Thanks for coming. I know this isn't easy for you. Easy wasn't the word I would have used. I wanted to tell you something, I said. What? I paused. The words were in my throat, but they felt wrong. He wasn't asking for the truth. He was offering me a polite exit. I just wanted to say I'm proud of you, I said. He finally looked at me. Thanks, Dad. We stood there. The silence stretched between us like a canyon. Melissa appeared at his side, glowing, radiant. Derek, they want the first dance. Come on. He took her hand. They walked back to the dance floor. I stayed at the bar. Gerald passed me on his way to the dance floor. He touched my shoulder. His fingers were heavy. Thanks for coming, Frank, he said. I know it means a lot to Derek. I didn't say anything. He smiled and walked away. Patricia came next. She stood beside me, her perfume thick and expensive. "You look good," she said. "Are you seeing anyone?" "No." She nodded. "That's probably for the best." I watched my son dance with his wife. He held her like she was the only thing in the world that I remembered holding him like that. When he was small, when he was sick, when he'd wake up crying in the middle of the night and I'd carry him to the sofa and wrap him in a blanket. I was the one who taught him how to ride a bike. I was the one who stayed up late helping him with his math homework. I was the one who drove him to every soccer practice, every band concert, every school play. But none of that mattered. Not tonight that I walked to the parking lot. The air was cold. The sky was black. My truck sat alone at the far end of the lot, under a flickering streetlight that I leaned against the hood and stared at the club. The windows glowed. The music floated out. I could hear laughter, clapping, the sound of 100 people celebrating a love story that had no place for me. I opened the truck door and sat in the driver's seat. The engine turned over on the third try. The heater groaned. I sat there for a long moment, my hands on the wheel, staring at nothing. Then I reached into the glove box. The manila folder was still there. Thick. Worn. The edges dog-eared from years of neglect. I'd found it in my basement 3 nights ago, buried in a filing cabinet Patricia had used when we were married. She'd forgotten it. She'd forgotten a lot of things. I pulled it out and opened it. Inside were copies of Gerald's insurance claims. Copies of medical records. A letter from a man named Roy Heston, accusing Gerald of fraud. An old journal entry from the same Roy Heston, dated 3 months before he died. I'd read everything 3 times. I knew what I had. I also knew what I could do with it. I closed the folder and put it back in the glove box. I sat there for a long time. The music from the club drifted across the lot. A slow song. Something about love and loss. I thought about Derek's face when he looked at me. The way his eyes had shifted away, like I was something to avoid. I thought about Gerald's smile. His hand on Derek's shoulder. I thought about Patricia dabbing her eyes. Then I thought about Roy Heston. Dead at 58. No one had ever brought him justice. I pulled out my phone. The screen glowed. I scrolled through my contacts. Past Patricia. Past Derek. Past old colleagues and distant cousins. I stopped at a name I hadn't called in years. * Karl Marx, attorney, *. My thumb hovered over the call button. The music swelled. I pressed it. The phone rang once. Twice. Karl Marx, a voice said. "Who's this?" "It's Frank," I said. "Frank Callahan." Silence. "Frank," Karl said. "It's been a long time. Is everything okay?" I looked at the glove box. "No," I said. "But I think I'm about to make it right." I hung up. The engine rattled. I pulled out of the lot and drove home. The folder sat in the passenger seat. It felt heavier than it should have. Carl's office was on the 3rd floor of a brick building on State Street, wedged between a bail bondsman and a tax preparer. The carpet was brown and stained. The fluorescent lights hummed a low, constant buzz. The air smelled like old coffee and paper. I sat across from his desk, the manila folder in my lap. Carl leaned back in his chair, his reading glasses perched on the bridge of his nose. He'd been flipping through the pages for 20 minutes. Every few seconds, he'd pause, squint, and read the same paragraph twice. I didn't move. My hands were flat on my thighs. My fingers were still. I'd been gripping the armrests on the drive over, but now my palms were dry. The adrenaline had burned off somewhere between the parking garage and the elevator. Carl closed the folder. He took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. "Where did you get this?" he asked. "Patricia's old filing cabinet," I said. "She left it in the basement when we split. I found it 3 nights ago." Carl tapped the folder. "This letter, the one from Roy Heston, it's dated 2008. I know. He's accusing Gerald of filing fraudulent workers' comp claims while still working off the books. He says Gerald took $200,000 from a family-owned construction company. The company went bankrupt. The owner had a heart attack. The owner died. I know. And this journal entry," Carl flipped to the last page. Heston writes that Gerald paid off a claims adjuster to rubber stamp the medical documents. He names the adjuster. He names the doctor. I know. Carl stared at me. Frank, do you understand what you have here? I nodded. This isn't just a grudge, he said. This is evidence. Real evidence. If we can verify these claims, we're looking at criminal fraud. Insurance fraud. Possibly conspiracy. Can we verify them? Carl leaned forward. Maybe. But we'll need more. We'll need bank records from that time period. We'll need to find the adjuster and the doctor, see if they're still alive. We'll need to find any employees who worked at that construction company. I don't have any of that. Then we start looking. Carl reached for his phone. He dialed a number, spoke in low tones, hung up. That was my investigator, he said. I'll have him dig into the records. It might take a few weeks. Weeks minimum, Carl said. This stuff is old. Paper records. Microfiche. People die, Frank. Buildings burn. Evidence gets lost. I sat back in my chair. The leather creaked. I don't want to wait, I said. I've been waiting for 15 years. Carl looked at me. His face was tired. His desk was covered in stacks of files, each one tagged with a different color. He was a man who dealt in slow justice. Deliberate. Methodical. I get it, he said. But if we rush this, we lose. Gerald will lawyer up. He'll bury us in motions. He'll claim the evidence is fabricated. And without corroboration, he might be right. I stood up. I walked to the window. Below me, State Street was busy. Cars honked. Pedestrians walked with their heads down. The world was moving, and I was standing still. What about the DA? I asked. What about him? We file the complaint now. Let them investigate. We don't have to give them everything. Just enough to open a case. Carl shook his head. The DA won't move without more. They need witnesses. They need records. They need a chain of custody. I turned to face him. Then I'll find the records. Carl stood up. He walked around the desk and put his hand on my shoulder. Frank, he said, I know you're angry. You have every right to be. But we have to be smart. We have to be careful. You don't take a knife to a gunfight. I looked at the folder on his desk. I'm not taking a knife, I said. That afternoon, I drove to the county clerk's office. The building was old, with marble floors and high ceilings. The air was cold. The lights were dim. I walked up to the counter and asked for property records from the early 2000s. The clerk was a young woman with glasses. She typed something into her computer. Voss Construction, she said. That's going to take a while. The records are in the basement. Microfiche. I'll wait. She handed me a form. I filled it out. She disappeared through a door marked Archives. I sat in a plastic chair and stared at the wall. The clock above the door ticked. Every second felt heavy. She came back 40 minutes later with a box of microfiche reels. These are from 2005 to 2008. That's all we have. A lot of the later records were destroyed in a flood. A flood, she shrugged. Basement flooded in 2012. Lost a lot of stuff. I carried the box to a machine in the corner. The screen was small. The images were blurry. I scrolled through reel after reel, squinting at faded numbers and smudged signatures. My eyes burned. My neck ached. But I kept going. At 4 o'clock, I found it. A tax lien filed against Voss Construction in 2007. The amount was $200,000. The lien was filed by a subcontractor who had never been paid. I took a photo with my phone. At 5 o'clock, I found another document. A medical records request from a Dr. Leonard Pike, dated 2006. The request listed Gerald Voss as the patient. The injury was a back sprain. The payout was $40,000. But the records showed Gerald had been working full-time during the same period. His timesheets were on file. He'd clocked 40 hours a week for 3 months while claiming he was too injured to work. I took another photo. At 6 o'clock, the clerk told me the office was closing. I left the box on the counter and walked out into the cold. The sky was dark. The streetlights were on. I stood on the sidewalk and looked at the photos on my phone. I had more than I'd started with. Not enough to convict Gerald, but enough to make him nervous. I drove to the library. The main branch was open until 9. I found a computer in the back corner and started searching for names. Dr. Leonard Pike. The claims adjuster, a man named Harold Wexler. The subcontractor who'd filed the lien, a company called Ace Framing. Dr. Pike had retired 10 years ago. He was living in Arizona. I found his address with a simple property search. Harold Wexler had died in 2014. A heart attack. But his widow was still alive. She lived in a retirement community outside the city. Ace Framing had gone out of business in 2009. The owner was still alive, though. I found him on Facebook. His name was Vince Caruso. I wrote down the names and addresses. Then I called Carl. I have more, I said. Names. Documents. Leads. Frank, it's almost 8 o'clock. I don't care what time it is. I need to know if this is enough. Carl was silent for a moment. It's a start, he said. But we're not there yet. Where is their conviction? Carl said. We need something that can't be disputed. Something that ties Gerald directly to the fraud. I closed my eyes. I thought about Derek. The wedding. Gerald's arm around his shoulders. Give me a week, I said. Frank, don't do anything, I'll call you in a week. I hung up. The next morning, I drove 2 counties over to meet Vince Caruso. He lived in a small house on a dead-end street. The porch was sagging. The lawn was overgrown. He came to the door in a bathrobe, a cup of coffee in his hand. Who are you? He asked. Frank Callahan, I said. I'm looking into an old case. Voss Construction. He stared at me. That was a long time ago. I know. But I have questions. He stepped back. Come in. The inside of the house was cluttered. Newspapers stacked on the floor. Dishes in the sink. He cleared a spot on the sofa and gestured for me to sit. Gerald Voss, he said, sitting across from me. That name still makes my blood boil. I figured. He owed me $60,000, Vince said. I did the framing for a commercial job he'd won. I bought materials. I hired workers. Then he said the client hadn't paid him yet. Kept stringing me along. What happened? He filed for bankruptcy on the company. Wiped out all his debts. Meanwhile, he was driving a new truck. Taking vacations. Living like a king. I pulled out my phone and showed him the photos of the tax lien. Did you file this? I asked. Vince nodded. I had a lawyer. We got the lien. But Gerald fought it. He said I'd done shoddy work. Dragged it out for years. I couldn't afford to keep fighting. Did you ever go to the police? Police don't care about construction fraud, Vince said. They said it was a civil matter. The DA wouldn't touch it. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Would you be willing to testify? I asked. Vince sat back. About what? About Gerald. About what he did. I'm building a case. He studied me. What's it to you, anyway? I told him about Derek. About the wedding. About the 15 years of silence. Vince listened. He didn't interrupt. When I was done, he leaned forward. I'll do it, he said. I'll tell anyone who'll listen. That bastard destroyed my business. Cost me my marriage. I've been waiting for someone to ask. I left his house with his phone number and a promise to call him when I needed him. The drive back was long. I watched the highway blur past. I had Gerald's address. I had Patricia's address. I had Derek's new house, the one Gerald had helped him buy. And I had the truth. I pulled into my driveway at dusk. The house was dark. I walked inside and sat at the kitchen table. The manila folder was there, waiting for me. I opened it and looked at the letter from Roy Heston. Dear Insurance Board, it read. I am writing to report fraudulent activity by my former business partner, Gerald Voss. I read the whole thing again. Then I took out my phone and dialed Derek. He answered on the third ring. Dad, his voice was surprised. What's up, Derek? I said. I need to see you. Tomorrow. Alone. Is something wrong? No, I said. Nothing's wrong. I just have something I need to show you. There was a long pause. Okay, he said finally. I'll come by around lunch. He hung up. I sat in the dark and stared at the folder. I wasn't done building my case. But I'd started something I couldn't stop. And in the morning, I'd show my son the truth. One piece at a time. Derek showed up at noon. I heard his car pull into the driveway before he knocked. The engine was quiet, a new sedan, something German, probably paid for with Gerald's money. I watched through the kitchen window as he stepped out, adjusted his jacket, and walked to my front door. He looked uncomfortable. His hands were in his pockets. His shoulders were tight. I opened the door before he could knock. Hey, Dad. Hey, son. He stepped inside. He looked around the living room, the old sofa, the faded curtains, the stack of mail on the coffee table. He hadn't been here in 2 years. Nice place, he said. You've kept it up. It's the same as it always was. He nodded. He didn't sit. I gestured to the kitchen. I made coffee. He followed me. I poured 2 mugs and set them on the table. He took the chair across from me. His fingers wrapped around the mug, but he didn't drink. So, he said. What did you want to show me? I took a breath. I reached for the manila folder on the counter. I set it on the table between us. Derek looked at it. What is that? Open it. He hesitated. Then he pulled the folder toward him and flipped it open. I watched his face as he read. The first page was the letter from Roy Heston. I saw his eyes move across the words. His forehead creased. What is this? He asked. Keep reading. He turned the page. The medical records. The tax lien. The journal entries from Roy Heston. He read each one slowly, carefully. By the time he reached the last page, his hands were shaking. Dad, he said. Where did you get this? Your mother left it in the basement. 15 years ago. I found it last week. He closed the folder. He pushed it away from him like it was hot. This is about Gerald, he said. Yes. You're saying Gerald stole money. I'm not saying it. Roy Heston said it. The medical records prove it. The tax lien proves it. Derek shook his head. This doesn't make sense. Gerald is successful. He runs a business. He's a fraud, I said. He stole $200,000 from a construction company. He claimed disability while he was still working. He destroyed people's lives. Derek stood up. His chair scraped against the tile floor. You can't just drop this on me, he said. You can't just. He ran a hand through his hair. Why are you showing me this now after all these years? Because I want you to know the truth. The truth, Derek said. You waited until I got married. You waited until I made a speech. You waited until I said. Until you said he was a better father than me. Derek flinched. I didn't look away at that speech, I said. I'm not going to pretend it didn't hurt. It did. But I didn't bring you here for revenge. I brought you here because you deserve to know who you've been trusting. Derek sat back down. His face was pale. He stared at the folder. Gerald never told me any of this, he said. Why would he? He gave me a job, Derek said. He helped me buy a house. He taught me how to negotiate deals. He bought your loyalty, I said. He bought it with stolen money. Derek was quiet for a long time that I let him be quiet that when he spoke again, his voice was different. Harder. What are you going to do with this? I'm going to the DA. He'll deny everything. He can deny it all he wants. I have the evidence. I have witnesses. Derek looked at me. What witnesses? Vince Caruso. Roy Heston's daughter. The people he cheated. Derek leaned back. His face was unreadable. Dad, he said, I don't know what to think. I'm not asking you to think anything. I'm just showing you the facts. He stood up again. This time, he walked to the window. His back was to me. He told me you had a gambling problem, Derek said quietly. I know. He showed me bank statements. Withdrawals. Hundreds of dollars every week. Those were for you, I said. Your soccer registration. Your tutoring fees. Your summer camp. I paid in cash because your mother froze our joint account. Derek turned. Why didn't you tell me? Because I didn't want you to feel guilty. He looked down at his hands. He made me believe you didn't care. Son, I've always cared. Derek walked back to the table. He sat down heavily. What am I supposed to do with this? He asked. I work for him. I work at his firm. He stopped. I've been telling everyone he's my father. I reached across the table and put my hand on his arm. You don't have to do anything today, I said. You don't have to decide anything. I just wanted you to know. Derek nodded slowly. Then he opened the folder again that he read through the journal entries from Roy Heston. He read the letter twice. He looked up at me. He took everything from these people, he said. Their jobs. Their savings. Their health. Yes. And he never paid them back. No. Derek closed the folder. He sat back in his chair. Can I keep this? He asked. Take it, I said. Take all of it. I have copies. He tucked the folder under his arm. Dad, he said. I need to think. I know. He walked toward the door. I followed him. He paused with his hand on the knob. Gerald's been talking about retiring, he said. He's been grooming me to take over the firm. He says it's going to be mine someday. I didn't say anything. He's been promising me everything, Derek continued. A partnership. A share of the profits. My name on the door. Son, I'm not going to tell you what to do. Derek opened the door. The cold air rushed in. I'll call you, he said. Then he was gone. I watched his car back out of the driveway. I watched it turn the corner and disappear. I stood in the doorway for a long time. That night, I called Carl. He took it, I said. He took the whole folder. Did he read it every page? Carl paused. How did he react? Quiet, I said. He didn't yell. He didn't defend Gerald. He just asked questions. That's good, Carl said. That means he's processing. We need to move faster, I said. If Gerald finds out Derek has those documents, he won't, Carl said. Not yet. But you're right. We should file the complaint tomorrow. What about the witnesses? We have Vince Caruso. We have Roy Heston's journal. We have the medical records. That's enough to open an investigation. I sat in the dark kitchen. The phone was warm against my ear. Carl, I said. What happens after we file letters? Subpoenas. Interviews. It'll take months. Months. I told you. This stuff doesn't move fast. I closed my eyes. I'm going to send Gerald a letter first. Frank, just a letter, I said. I want to give him one chance to confess. Confess to what? To everything. In writing. Before the DA gets involved. Carl sighed. He won't do it. He will if he thinks the alternative is worse. There was a long silence on Carl's end. Frank, be careful, he said. You're poking a rattlesnake. I know, I said. I've been poking it for 15 years. This is just the first time it's going to bite back. I hung up. The next morning, I sat at my kitchen table and wrote the letter. I kept it short. Professional. No emotion. I have evidence of your fraud. I have witnesses. I have medical records. I have tax liens. I have a journal from Roy Heston that I am giving you one chance to confess in writing. Notarized. By Friday. If you don't, I'm going to the DA. This is not a threat. This is a courtesy. I signed my name. I addressed the envelope to Gerald's office. Not his house. I wanted it to land on his desk during business hours. I drove to the post office and mailed a priority. Then I went home and waited. 3 days passed. No call. No letter. No response. On Thursday night, my phone rang. It was Derek. Dad, he said. I need you to come over. Gerald is here. He's talking about you. What do you mean? He's angry, Derek said. He's been drinking. He says you're threatening him. He says you're making things up. I stood up. I reached for my keys. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Dad, wait, what? Derek paused. He has a gun. I stopped. What? Not in his hand, Derek said. But he showed it to me. He said you're trying to destroy him. He said he won't let that happen. Stay inside, I said. Lock the door. I'm calling the police. I dialed 911. I need help at 1425, Oak Hill Drive, I said. There's a man with a weapon. He's threatening my son. The dispatcher asked questions. I answered them. I gave Gerald's name, his description, the address. Then I drove. I drove fast. My hands were tight on the wheel. My heart was pounding. When I pulled up to Derek's house, the police were already there. 2 cruisers. Flashing lights. Gerald was standing on the front lawn, his hands in the air. He wasn't holding a gun. The officers were patting him down. They were talking to him in calm, low voices. I parked the truck and walked over. Gerald saw me. His eyes were wild. This is your fault, he spat. You and your stupid letters. You and your stupid folder. I didn't respond. The officers handcuffed him. They led him to the cruiser. Derek came out of the house. His face was pale. You called the police, he said. I called the police, I said. I told you he had a gun. You did. And I believed you. Derek looked at me. His expression was complicated. Anger. Confusion. Something that looked almost like relief. You saved me, he said. I just made a call. Gerald was in the back of the cruiser now. He was shouting something through the glass, but I couldn't hear him. One of the officers walked over to me. Sir, he said, we're going to take him in. He's not under arrest yet, but we're holding him for questioning. Thank you. The officer nodded. He walked back to the cruiser. The car drove away. Derek stood beside me, staring at the empty road. He threatened me, he said quietly. He said if I told anyone about the folder, he'd make sure I never worked in this town again. Son, he can't do that. He doesn't have that power anymore. Derek turned to me. What happens now? Now we wait. We walked inside. Derek poured 2 glasses of water. We sat in his living room and didn't speak. The clock ticked. At midnight, I stood up. I'm going home, I said. Dad, Derek said. Thank you. I nodded. I walked out the door. The night was cold. I drove home with the window down, letting the air hit my face. I had crossed a line. And there was no going back. The Thanksgiving invitation arrived in a cream-colored envelope with a gold-embossed return address. Patricia's handwriting. Loopy. Precise. The kind of script that said nothing and implied everything. I held it over the kitchen trash can for a full 30 seconds. Then I opened it up. You are cordially invited to join the Voss family for Thanksgiving dinner at 4 p.m. Farmhouse address enclosed. Please RSVP. No mention of Gerald's arrest. No mention of the police cruiser on the lawn. No mention of the folder, the letter, or the fact that my son had called me in the middle of the night, terrified that I called Derek. Did you know about this? I asked. Mom sent them out 2 weeks ago, he said. Before everything. Are you going? A pause. I don't know. Melissa wants to. Her parents are coming. They've already booked flights. Derek, I have to tell you something. What guy filed the complaint with the DA yesterday? Carl and I. It's official now. Silenced up. Derek, I'm here, he said. He stopped. What does that mean? It means Gerald is going to be investigated. It means everything in that folder is going to come out. At Thanksgiving, I don't know when. But soon. Derek exhaled. I could hear him pacing. The floorboards creaked. Dad, if you show up at this dinner, I'm not going to show up to start a fight. I'm going to show up to be with my son. You never go to Thanksgiving. That's because I was never invited. Until this year. Derek went quiet again. Then, Mom told me she invited you because Gerald said it was time to bury the hatchet. I almost laughed. Gerald said that, yeah. He told her you'd been acting strange lately. That you were going through something. Going through something. That's what he said. I set the invitation on the counter. The gold embossing caught the light. Derek, I said. I'm going to this dinner. I'm going to sit at that table. And I'm going to let Gerald say whatever he wants. Why? Because I want to hear it. I want to see what he says when he thinks he's in control. Derek hesitated. I'll be there too. Just in case. Just in case what? Just in case he tries something. I hung up. I spent the next 2 weeks preparing. Carl called me every other day with updates. The DA's office had assigned an investigator. They'd interviewed Vince Caruso. They'd contacted Roy Heston's daughter. They'd pulled Gerald's bank records from 2006 to 2008. There's a pattern, Carl said. Large cash deposits that don't match his reported income. Multiple accounts. Offshore transfers. How long until they make an arrest? Months, Carl said. But the investigation is active. The DA is taking it seriously. Good. Frank, Carl said. Don't do anything reckless at this dinner. I'm not going to do anything reckless. I'm going to eat turkey. I'm going to smile. I'm going to be polite. I don't believe you. Good, I said. Then you won't be surprised. Thanksgiving morning was cold and gray. I put on my best shirt, blue, pressed, the one I'd worn to Derek's college graduation. I shaved. I combed my hair. I packed the leather portfolio with the copies of the documents. The letter. The medical records. The tax liens. Roy Heston's journal. I left it in the truck. I drove to the farmhouse at 3:45. The driveway was full of cars. SUVs. Sedans. Gerald's new Porsche sat in the middle of it all, gleaming like a trophy. I parked at the far end of the grass and walked to the door. Patricia opened it. She wore a burgundy dress and a forced smile. Frank, she said. You came. Patricia. She stepped aside. I walked into the house. The farmhouse was warm. The smell of turkey and cinnamon filled the air. The dining table stretched across the room, covered in linen and silver. Gerald stood by the fireplace, holding a glass of wine. He looked composed. Groomed. His hair was slicked back. His shirt was white and crisp. He saw me and smiled. Frank, he said. I'm glad you could make it. I nodded. Gerald. He walked toward me. He extended his hand. I shook it. His grip was firm. Too firm that let's keep this pleasant, he said quietly, so only I could hear. For Patricia's sake. I'm always pleasant, I said that he laughed. It was hollow. Derek came up behind me. He put his hand on my shoulder. Hey, Dad. Hey, son. Melissa hugged me. She smelled like perfume and pie. I'm so glad you're here, she said. We need more family around this table. I looked at the table. 12 places. The chairs were filled with people I recognized, Patricia's sisters, Gerald's golf buddies, a few neighbors. I took my seat near the end. Gerald sat at the head. The dinner began. We passed dishes. We filled plates. We made small talk. The weather. The football game. The market. Gerald held court. He told stories about his business. About the deals he'd made. About the clients he'd impressed. I ate my turkey. I drank my wine. I listened. After the pie, Gerald stood up. I want to make a toast, he said. He raised his glass. To family. To the people who matter. Everyone raised their glasses. Especially to Derek, Gerald continued. The son I never had but always wanted. Derek's jaw tightened. He didn't raise his glass. Gerald noticed. His smile flickered. Derek, he said. Is something wrong? No, Derek said. Just full. Gerald laughed. The room laughed with him. Then he looked at me. Frank, he said. I want to thank you for coming. I know this isn't easy for you. Watching your son succeed under another man's guidance. The table went quiet. I set down my fork. Guidance, I said. Gerald nodded. I've given him opportunities he wouldn't have had otherwise. Is that what you call it? The room got quieter. Patricia put down her glass. Frank, sorry, I said. I didn't mean to interrupt. Please. Continue. Gerald's eyes narrowed. He didn't continue. Instead, he looked at Derek. Son, he said. I need to ask you something. What, your father gave you a folder? A few weeks ago. Derek went still. Yes. Did you read it? Yes. And what did you think? Derek looked at me. Then he looked at Gerald. I think you need to tell Mom the truth, he said. The room was silent. Gerald's face went pale. What are you talking about? Your business, Derek said. Your insurance claims. Roy Heston. All of it. Gerald set down his wine glass. It clinked against the table. I don't know what you're talking about, he said. I think you do. Patricia stood up. Derek, what is this? Ask your husband. She turned to Gerald. Gerald's hands were on the table. His knuckles were white. Your son has been poisoned, he said. By a bitter man who can't let go of the past. I stood up. I walked to the front of the table. Gerald, I said. I have a question. What, did you or did you not file fraudulent workers' comp claims in 2006? He stared at me. His mouth opened, but no sound came. I have the records, I said. I have the medical forms. I have the signed timesheets showing you were working while you claimed you were injured. That's a lie. It's not. I have copies. I have bank records. I have Vince Caruso. I have Roy Heston's journal. Gerald's face was red. His fists were clenched. You're going to destroy my family over a grudge, he spat. Your family, I said. Or the family you stole from. Patricia was crying now. Her hands were over her mouth. Gerald, she said. Is this true? Of course it's not true. Then why are you so angry? Gerald didn't answer. I walked to the door. I opened it. The leather portfolio was in my truck. I walked to the truck, pulled it out, and walked back inside. I set it on the table. Everything is in here, I said. Every document. Every record. Every witness statement. Gerald stared at the folder like it was a snake. Patricia, I said. You should read it. Every page. She looked at Gerald. He didn't meet her eyes. She reached for the folder. Don't. Gerald said that she opened it. The room was silent as she read. The clock ticked. The fireplace crackled. Patricia closed the folder. Her face was white. I trusted you, she said. Patricia, get out. Gerald didn't move. I said get out. He stood up. He walked to the door. He paused and looked back. This isn't over, he said. He pointed at me. I'll bury you. The DA is already building a case, I said. You'll be lucky if you don't end up in prison. Gerald left. The door slammed. The room was still. Patricia sat down heavily. She stared at the folder. Derek stood up. Dad, he said. I nodded. I should go. I said. No, Patricia said. Her voice was small. No, Frank. Please stay. I looked at her. She was crying. Please, she repeated. I sat back down. The turkey was cold. But the truth was finally warm. The investigation moved faster than anyone expected. Carl called me on a Tuesday morning in December. His voice was clipped, professional, but I could hear the satisfaction underneath. Frank, they're bringing charges. Fraud. Conspiracy. Multiple counts. The DA's office just called. I was standing in my kitchen, a mug of coffee in my hand. The sun was coming through the window, thin and pale. When arraignment is next week. They're not offering bail. He's a flight risk. I set down the mug. Flight risk. He's been liquidating assets. The Porsche is gone. The bank accounts are empty. He transferred ownership of the house to a shell company last month. The DA caught it. Patricia. She's not named in the complaint. But she's going to lose everything. The house. The accounts. The investments. I didn't say anything. Frank, Carl said. You did the right thing. I hung up. I drove to the courthouse on the day of the arraignment. The building was gray and old, with marble steps and metal detectors at the entrance. I walked through security, emptied my pockets, and found a seat in the back of the courtroom. Gerald was brought in wearing an orange jumpsuit. His wrists were cuffed. His hair was disheveled. He looked smaller than I remembered. Patricia sat in the front row. She didn't look at him. Derek was beside her. He saw me and nodded. The judge read the charges. Gerald pleaded not guilty. His lawyer spoke in hushed, rapid tones. The bail was denied. Gerald was led away. He passed within 3 feet of me. He looked up and saw me. His eyes were hollow. This isn't over, he said. It is, I said. The guards pulled him away. I walked out of the courthouse. The air was cold. The sky was clear. I stood on the steps and breathed. Derek came out behind me. Dad, he said. Can we talk? I nodded. We walked to a bench near the courthouse entrance. The metal was cold through my coat. I've been thinking, Derek said. About everything. The wedding. The speech. The way I treated you. Son, let me finish. I closed my mouth. I was angry, Derek said. After the divorce, I was angry at everyone. Mom. Gerald. You. I blamed you for leaving, even though you didn't leave. You were just, gone. Working. Paying for things. I didn't see it then. You were young. I wasn't that young. I was 23 when Gerald started giving me jobs. I was 25 when I started calling him my father. He looked down at his hands. I wanted someone to look up to. And Gerald was there. He was always there. Buying me things. Taking me places. Making me feel important. I didn't interrupt. It wasn't until I read that folder, Derek said. Until I saw the names. Roy Heston. Vince Caruso. The people he destroyed. That's when I understood. Understood what? Understood that he never cared about me. He cared about what I looked like standing next to him. I put my hand on his shoulder. I'm sorry, Derek said. For the wedding. For what I said. For making you feel invisible. Son, I forgave you a long time ago. How, I thought about it. The wedding. The champagne flute. The way my ears had rung that, because you're my son, I said. And that's not conditional. Derek wiped his eyes. He didn't say anything that we sat on the bench for a long time that the winter sun was low. The shadows were long that I'm going to file for divorce, Patricia told me 3 weeks later that we were sitting in her new apartment. The furniture was sparse. The walls were bare. She'd moved out of the farmhouse the day after Gerald was arrested. I'm sorry, I said that. She laughed. It wasn't a happy laugh. Sorry for what you did, what I should have done years ago. I just didn't want to see it. Patricia, don't, she said. Don't make excuses for me. I chose him. I believed his stories. I let him push you out of Derek's life. You didn't push me out. I stepped back. I thought it was the right thing to do. It wasn't. I know that now. She looked at me. Her eyes were tired. The years had carved lines into her face that weren't there before. Can you forgive me? She asked. Can you forgive yourself? She didn't answer. I stood up. Patricia, I'm not going to pretend the past didn't happen. But I'm also not going to spend the rest of my life being angry. I did what I did because I had to. Not because I wanted to hurt you. She nodded. Derek is coming for dinner tonight, she said. He's bringing Melissa. They want to talk about the new house. New house. He's buying a place of his own. Not with Gerald's money. He got a loan. A real one. Good. She stood up. She walked to the door. You can stay, she said. If you want. For dinner. I looked at her. The apartment was small. The kitchen was cramped. But the smell of cooking food was coming from the stove. Thanks, I said. But I think I'll give you some space. She nodded. I walked out the door and down the stairs. Gerald's trial began in February. I attended every day. I sat in the back row, watching the proceedings. The prosecution built their case methodically. Vince Caruso testified about the $60,000 Gerald owed him. Roy Heston's daughter testified about her father's journal. The medical records were entered into evidence. The tax liens were presented. Gerald's lawyer tried to discredit the witnesses. He claimed the documents were forgeries. He claimed Vince Caruso was a disgruntled former employee. The jury didn't believe him. On the 5th day, Gerald took the stand. He was calm. Controlled. He answered questions in a measured, even voice. But when the prosecutor brought up Roy Heston's name, Gerald's composure cracked. Mr. Voss, the prosecutor said, did you know Roy Heston? I knew him. Did you have a business relationship with him? Yes. Did you defraud him? No. The prosecutor pulled out Roy Heston's journal. Mr. Heston's journal states that you falsified insurance claims. Is that true? No. Then why did he write it? I don't know. The prosecutor leaned forward. Mr. Voss, you lost the construction company in 2008. You declared bankruptcy. But your personal assets continue to grow. How is that possible? Gerald didn't answer. Your bank records show large cash deposits during the same period you claimed disability. Can you explain that? Gerald's hands were gripping the witness stand. His knuckles were white. I want to invoke the Fifth Amendment, he said. The judge granted it. The jury deliberated for 2 days. When they came back, the verdict was unanimous. Guilty on all counts. Gerald was sentenced to 10 years. He was led away in handcuffs. I didn't cheer. I didn't smile. I just sat in my seat and let the weight of it settle. Patricia was crying in the front row. Derek was holding her hand. I walked out of the courthouse alone. The sun was setting. The sky was orange and red. I drove home. The house was dark. I turned on the lights. I sat in my kitchen. The manila folder was on the counter. I picked it up and opened it. The letter from Roy Heston. The medical records. The journal entries. I read through everything one last time. Then I took the folder to the fireplace. I lit a match. The papers caught fire. The edges curled. The ink burned black that I watched the flames until nothing was left but ash. The next morning, Derek came over. He brought coffee. 2 cups. He set one in front of me. Dad, he said. I want to ask you something. What will you come to my housewarming party? When is it? Next weekend. Melissa's parents are coming. Some of her friends. I told them about you. Everything. Everything you did. The folder. The evidence. The way you waited. The way you stayed silent until you couldn't. I took a sip of the coffee. I'll be there, I said. Derek smiled. It was the first real smile I'd seen from him in years. He left. I sat alone in my kitchen and watched the sun rise. The house was quiet. The check engine light on my truck was still on. The lawn needed mowing. The gutters needed cleaning. But none of that mattered. I had peace. Silence isn't strength. But silence can be patience. Silence can be strategy. Silence can be the moment before the storm breaks. I learned that you can't make people love you. You can't force them to see your value. All you can do is stand in your truth and wait. And when the time comes, you don't scream. You don't shout. You just open the folder. And you let the truth speak for itself. Because the truth doesn't need to be loud. It just needs to be heard. I got up from the table. I walked outside. The air was cold. The sky was clear. I looked at the house. The peeling paint. The sagging porch. I smiled. I had a housewarming party to attend. And a son who finally knew who his father was. What would you have done in my shoes? Would you have stayed silent forever, or would you have opened the folder? Drop your verdict in the comments.